On the X platform this morning, we are moving into the economy, and of course, this particular discussion for me is quite frightening. But for some economists, they will tell you that there is no crime borrowing as long as you are borrowing to grow the economy, to develop your infrastructure, and of course, add value to the GDP of the country. This morning, we'll be having this conversation on Nigeria's increasing debt profile with Muktar Mohammed, who is the CEO of Finance with Muktar, is equally a financial management consultant. And as of late April 2026, Nigeria's debt profile is characterized by rapid, historically high acceleration in borrowing, reaching a total of public debt of 159.28 trillion by the end of December 2025, and rising further in early 2026. The federal government is operating under a revised massive 2026 budget with a significantly increased borrowing plan. And there you have the breakdown. Massive 2026 borrowing plan. The federal government increased its planned 2026 borrowing by 11.33 trillion naira to a total of 29.23 trillion naira. The increase is intended to bridge a deficit of over 31 trillion in the approved 68.32 trillion budget. But before we go into the breakdown of this borrowing plan and debt servicing elements of the federal government, Mukhtar, oftentimes you have said it at different fora that it is not a crime to borrow, it is not a crime to get loan, but there are some people in certain quarters raising questions as to how Mr. President continually writes members of the Senate to approve this loan, to approve that loan, and they are afraid that Nigeria might be in debt forever. Are you also afraid as to the speed of borrowing of the current administration?
Well, Jibola, what we will say is, well, Nigeria, there's no country that will not be in debt forever. Even the greatest economies in the world, they are still borrowing. I mean, so that's for me, it's not it's not an issue. But again, it's what type of debt are you incurring? Even for if you look at the profiles of the world riches of the men that are richest in the world, you go and see their debt profile. Also, you know that their debt profile is also high. But what differentiates them is that they are servicing this debt, their revenue to service this debt, the income that are coming are servicing the debt. So definitely that doesn't mean that your asset is enough to write off whatever debt that you have. In our own case, I think we started reckless borrowing before. Now that we were borrowing for recurrent expenditure, debt servicing, it was a cycle. You borrow to service debt, then you borrow again to service debt, and you are not looking at the revenue side. I think that has been the major challenge with us. I think borrowing in itself is not a problem, but the revenue. But you see, where the government tried to tell people is that they use the economic terms, debt to GDP is still fantastic. But the debt to GDP is not going to be what we pay. It's your revenue that will pay off your debt. Right. So I think the challenge we have is in the side of revenue. And then when you look at that revenue profile, when you look at the kind of borrowing they are borrowing, you realize that even this current administration might not even pay a dime of those debts. So it will come to the next administration to begin to pay, because they have this moratorium period whereby some of them is about 7 years. Some of the debt that Buhari administration collected, Tinubu administration is paying for it. So maybe some of the debt Tinubu administration will take is another administration will pay. So it's going to be a cycle. And then when you look at that cycle, then you now begin to look at the future earning of Nigeria. What are we really doing? It's just like a man now. You are building up your assets through borrowing plan. You know that through in the next 5-10 years, my asset, value of my asset, what I will get from my asset will be able to pay off whatever debt I'm owing. That's why they say that's a good debt. Now, but what we've seen thus far is sometimes we see this bad debt, very bad debt, in terms of bad debt that have to do with the current expenditure. But when you look at what has happened as at the last borrowing, where people started shouting and everybody said, wow, they are selling our destiny. About $560 million from the bank, or I think from a corporation in Netherlands. Yeah. For me, it's a strategic borrowing, whereby you're using it for the Badagry Sokoto super highway. Yeah. That for me is a good borrowing. You are saying that you are borrowing for a particular infrastructure.
Okay.
It is tied to it. Now, if you look at that Badagry Sokoto Superhighway, then we'll begin to look at the economic importance of that highway to the life of ordinary Nigeria in terms of productivity, in terms of the informal sector, the smaller businesses that will crop up during this construction of this route. Then after the construction of the route, the smooth nature of movement of goods and services. Are we going to toll this road? When we toll this road, a lot of people move that road, then we are paying through. Those toll and everything, will it be able to service those debts? That is good debt for me because it's tied to infrastructure. But when you are borrowing for salary and allowances, that's where the problem is. So that's why you look at when, before President Tinubu came to power, the debt to revenue, we're servicing about 90-something%. So that about revenue to service debt. And that is why there was no any capital project. That's why you see the ministries will be complaining. Money have been approved for budget from by the president during budget presentation. Released. But there's money is not being released. But there's no money to be released. Because all the money is servicing debt. So for those projects to even see the light of the day, then the government will have to go and borrow
again. Yeah.
So it's becoming a cycle. Now, how do we come out of these cycles? That's what I expected an administration of this nature, because the ingenuity that we've seen with the president, the kind of person that he is, or I don't say he was, he is, we expected that there will be a different way. Now, what's the different way? One, I talked about the Sokoto Superhighway. Then let's look at the coastal road, Lagos, Calabar Coastal Road. Why should government put such a huge fund in such a project? Why should even government be doing this Badagry Sokoto Highway when you can get the private sector, build and operate? And what you as a government is that you have provided the leeway in the area of tax holiday, so that you can have more money to invest in social investment, education, healthcare. That is what is done globally. You remember the Biden administration came up with the American infrastructural plan, trying to reconstruct their road, to improve their roads network. It was it's going to be a PPP, public-private partnership. That is the way to go. But you see, government look for easy way out. The easy way out is to borrow. But the way to grow your economy, create job, and also not be able to let it hit the life of the ordinary Nigerian is to go to the PPP, so that you can have more projects, so that you can be helping other people to move from poverty. Because now, look, you say, okay, you do those roads, you will not collect taxes for some time from the government. But let me tell you, those people that are going to be working for those companies, you still collect taxes from them. It's only the company that will not be taxed because you've given them maybe 10 or 15 years tax holiday because of what they have done. But the people that are working there will still pay tax. So at the end of the day, after 15 years, it still come back. It's a win-win. So that is why we keep saying that. Why sometimes you have these challenges that we have politicians in head of administrations. We don't have statesmen that are looking at the future. The politicians are looking at what should be tied to my name. Now, I'm the one that did this. It's not that 15 years after you begin to enjoy it, that you're not tied to the person. No, that's not the way to think as a statesman.
Okay. Muktar, from what you've explained so far this morning, more or less like you've looked at the causative effect. You've also tried to give some solutions as to what government can actually do here. But can we also look at it from this angle? Because again, time and time again, you've alluded to the fact that borrowing is not the problem. What you're borrowing for can actually then be the problem. So 2 examples you've cited now, the Calabar, Lagos Coastal Road, as well as the Sokoto Superhighway, borrowing for infrastructure development, fantastic. But are we also gradually getting into a debt trap, seeing full well that there's always somewhere to go to access these loans? Because there are people waiting to give you money because they know that it's business and they will recoup at the end of the day. So if we continue this way, is the country likely to get into a trap where virtually everything that we do, we will continue to seek loans to finance those projects?
Yeah, we're already in that trap now.
So if this is a trap, is it a sustainable one, or is it, a distress one?
No, it's a distress trap.
It's a distress trap.
It's a distress trap because we have now been, we just, everything on our budget, You look at our budget, our
It's been
revenue. Our
premised
revenue
on
is very
borrowing.
low. Then, but we are wanting to do huge project. We have to borrow. So it's not a trap. It's more or less like you are eating more than
You
You can
buy
chew.
it.
you can chew,
Right.
or you are spending more than you earn.
Yeah.
So you are not doing yourself any good, even if you are looking at your future earnings.
Okay.
Your future earnings is also tied to a lot of variables that you have no control over.
Yeah. So, but for those agents or those, who borrow, the IMF is there. You mentioned, of course, the from the Netherlands and also that. Aren't there prerequisites for borrowing when you know that this particular country is in a trap, and there's also that that concern that they are borrowing and their revenue is nothing to write home about, or for them, is it just about we don't care, it is business?
Well, number one, you have to look at when they are borrowing, they don't just borrow you because they want to borrow you. You are also tied to a lot of assets. And you heard about the forward payments using crude oil. That's a part of borrowing. They know you have the resources. So you are borrowing tied to your assets.
Right.
Some of this borrowing, remember, like I said, some of why we have not been able to make money in the current oil boom.
It's because we have borrowed with it.
We are borrowed with it. So we are what we are.
So what
paying.
are we trading with?
We are
Not trading with
paying.
anything.
We are paying. We are using what they call forward payment. The borrowing was tied to crude.
Yeah.
So you must give them that crude.
Right.
So you don't, and you are not producing enough to meet up your own, to gain your own,
to shore up your own revenue.
So
right. So this is actually, like you said, is a distress. That
it's
we
a distress we are, definitely. But again, you ask yourself, which other means, like I said, which other means would the government go? They would have gone for the PPP. Instead of, you see, the Chinese Development Bank. Yes, the Chinese Development Bank. I think the Murtala Mohammed International Airport too is being handled by Chinese company, build and operate for the next 25 years. Those are the ways to go.
Okay.
We look at the Apapas to Ojota Road was done by an individual, company, Dangote Group.
Dangote, yeah.
And this is the way to go. So why are we not looking at it? There's a particular road that's been handled now today by MTN. I think Enugu, Onitsha. All these are the ways to go. We have the companies.
Yeah.
So why are we not using them? We have the multinationals. If they have to come here, are you going to? They are still going to make money.
Right.
That's the truth.
And
But
yet we keep saying we keep asking for investors. So if we're not asking for investors to go into such arrangement, then what are we asking for investors for?
when you look at investors will look at your economy.
Right.
That's why people will say it's better you look at in-house. Investor will look at your economy.
Is
As
it viable?
today, the only investor that want to benefit from the Nigerian economy is the hot money investor, the portfolio investor. He comes in here, he makes his money, and
And
gone.
it ships out.
Because why? You have inconsistency in terms of policies. So before your inconsistency will trap them, they've made their money and they are
Gone.
off.
Right.
Remember that what those inconsistency was what has brought us to where we are, when a lot of airlines, international airlines, had their money trapped.
Trapped here, true.
So those are type of inconsistency. So you don't attract foreign direct investors. Up to this moment, we have not really attracted. In short, Buhari administration foreign direct investment was zero.
Okay. All right. Just like you have said, the debt management office is equally saying here that borrowing is needed for infrastructure and growth. But the IMF is indicating that high debt service to revenue ratio will remain significant constraints up until now, till 2028, and they are warning that the total debt of Nigeria might exceed 200 trillion with a short term to medium term if the current trend should continue.
Exactly.
Are you also afraid?
I'm afraid. That's why I'm saying there's a trap. I'm afraid if we continue to borrow the way we are borrowing. Like I said, I'm not against borrowing. I've said it over and over. But there must be good borrowing and bad borrowing. Where you have an option, why are you bent on doing it your own way? You should look at global best practice. We want to be a globalized economy. We want to be among the 20 largest economies in the world.
And those are better options.
Those are things that we need to do. You need to begin to look. A lot of investors are coming to Nigeria, not because, they look at Nigeria as one, but they look at it because there's a lot of potential for investment in terms of our infrastructure. We have companies that are doing infrastructural funding. presently, private sector companies, they are basically established for funding of infrastructural projects. So why are we not looking at it? Why is it that government is crowding out the private sector in the area of borrowing? We must begin to look at that. Government should not crowd out the private sector, because if the private sectors are the ones that are borrowing, they are galvanizing the economy. So that means that a lot of jobs will be created because they are expanding. But in a situation whereby you realize that all our borrowing is now government induced, then look at the banks. So because government is always borrowing, banks now look at that as an easy way to make revenue.
Yeah.
If you look at the bank balance sheet, most of their revenue are just invest in treasury bill, invest in government security, invest in government bond, because they're what's available.
Okay.
They rather if you look at, say, oh, come and give a small business, they say, no, we look for safe haven. Our non-performing loan is getting higher by the day. Let's just make money through the government security, treasury bill. That's what they do. Why? Because they are seeing government as a cash cow. Government is the only one that is borrowing. And they are borrowing at a high cost. Then they go for abroad to borrow at a low cost. And then bring it in them. But that margin of low cost is now disputed with exchange rate volatility.
This is actually a cycle, and it's, like you said, it's one that actually calls for concern. But when we look at the new tax reform, is that able to have any positive effect on the revenue generation of the country? And how do we also go back to the fear or the thoughts hitherto before the tax reforms, where a lot of Nigerians said it looks like this administration is just going to tax Nigerians to death?
Taxing itself, again, is how economy grows. You cannot say you can't pay your tax,
Right.
as long as you are making a living out of that economy. If you are employed, you pay your tax. If you are making revenue, you have to pay your tax. I don't think the problem is in the area of paying. Most Nigerians are just concerned that we pay, but we don't see value.
For what we're paying for.
Yeah. So it's not that people don't want to pay their taxes. If I pay a tax and I see a government worker, I mean my leader or a governor,
A political
or
office holder,
officer,
right.
driving with 5 to 10 cars, how do I feel? And they are taking me off the road that I'm paying tax for.
Right.
And they have 10 cars. They are coming, they will stop us for the next 30 minutes, 1 hour. Me, taxpayer. And then they are not coming when you see 10 cars, and all these cars are fueled by you. And meanwhile, the roads are bad. The roads that they will apply to the now are the roads that are good. So people are saying, look, if I have to pay tax, I need to see what. Remember the first time Asiwaju was governor of Lagos State? People came out voluntarily to pay tax.
Right.
Why? You see, they will say taxpayer money
At
to
work.
work. They'll put a signpost, and you see that project. That was how Lagos started generating internal generated revenue. They were tied to projects. Now, you look at the tax law. Now, tax globally has moved from revenue. So that's what we keep saying. Tax should not be a bent of revenue. Tax should be how to grow your economy. When you grow your economy, revenue will definitely come and they will pay tax.
Voluntarily.
Voluntarily. Now, this current tax law, do I like it? I love the law. Do you know what I liked about the law? The private sector side of the law, the informal sector of the law. The law, rather than the woman selling on the street, the woman in the market paying levies, he cannot reduce and pay taxes that come to government. Because most of levies doesn't go to government.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Levies are where it's for corruption. Because nobody give account of levies. But you give account of taxes. The current administration have done well in terms of trying to block this revenue leakage. You see, now we now have Nigerian Revenue Service. Now, NNPC does not keep money any longer.
Yeah. It's paid into the federation account.
It goes directly to the federation account through the National Revenue Service.
So there's
And
just one collection point.
One collection point.
Yeah.
Which is good. And so from that collection point, you can now take to the 3 tiers of government. Now, the challenge is, if the tax law have to work, if we want to agree the tax law, the 3 tiers of government must be in synergy.
Right.
Because local government, you are earning more money. It's coming directly to you. But we are not seeing the impact. State government, you are earning more money. is coming directly to you. We are not seeing the
impact.
impact. So everybody is just looking at the federal government, not holding forth for Ashwaji or not holding forth for the federal government. With the federal government, you can see 1 or 2 or 3 projects that they are doing with the money. They can say, oh, we are doing this, we are doing that, you will see it. They will tell you, even if you argue with the figure, but project is going on. But with the state government, with the local government, they will keep telling you that, yes, it looks like we are ending more. But if you look at the exchange rate, we are ending less. Are you paid in dollar?
Okay.
Yeah.
Muktar, there was something you raised the other time, which is revenue, and there is no 100% guarantee that your projected revenues will come in. So how do we service this debt? And when you look at the breakdown of debt servicing in the 2026 budget, it's projected to consume nearly 15.9 trillion, representing over 40% of the revenue that we are projected to generate. Just in case we are not able to generate these revenues or resources from these revenue, how then do we service this debt? Are we not going to borrow more to also continue to service?
Of course, now, if you have to service there, you have to borrow. That's the truth. If your revenue is not there and your future revenue is not coming. So sometimes you see what government does is like, they look at, okay, let me give you an example. Projection. We are at the moment, government have projected 2.0, I think about about 1.something million barrel
of crude per day.
And you said, okay, but that is conservative. We can do like 2.something million barrel. So with that, we will not knock off. Those are what they use. They don't just, budget. They don't just tie it rigidly to what we have. So that's why you see them, they say budget deficit, they will cover up the budget. But the challenge is, in Nigeria, we have not seen that budget deficit go down during the budgetary year, that, we have been able to make enough revenue. So that's the challenge. And it's not that, like I said, it's not that people don't pay, but most of this money that people pay outside taxes do not go to the government. So that's why the government is trying to say, look, we want to reduce the amount of levies people pay so that people can pay taxes. Once people start paying taxes, our revenue will improve, we will reduce the budget deficit. But the fact of the matter is that the local government especially strive on levies.
Okay. So based on the PPP arrangements that you spoke about earlier on, as to one of the ways that government can also look at the feasibility of this project, what role does financial recklessness play here when it comes to revenue and then ensuring that, projects that you borrow for done to the letter? Because, again, you mentioned the fear of the citizens as to whether or not what government is borrowing for is what they're actually spending the funds on. So how do we marry financial recklessness with ensuring that what you're borrowing for is truly what those funds are being channeled into?
Well, financial recklessness is something that has really affected Nigeria thus far. Like I said, high cost of governance is also a part of financial recklessness. So we need to improve on that. Now, how do we go about making sure that money that are borrowed are used judiciously? Then the people have to be involved. We have to ask questions. You said you were borrowing for the Sokoto Superhighway. Has the money come? Why are we not yet seeing any movement in that corridor?
Right.
You are not doing what the money you borrowed, was it to finish the whole project
or
to start? Those are part of the question. The people need to be involved before you begin to see financial prudence. Because what we have now is that you don't even have a right now. You don't even have a right to question your political appointee. Question the government. When you try to question them, they call it cyber bully. You started bullying them, and before you know, they are taking you to court. That they are charging you to court for cyber bullying. But all you did was to ask a question. You have collected that amount of money. Why is it not doing this project? That's it. Freedom of information bill. I'm supposed to be able to walk up to any parastatal and say, X amount of money was your budget allocation. Have you received it? We don't know how much is. The only time we know that parastatal did not receive budget is when the president start complaining, and the House of Members of the Federal House start saying, oh, we are calling the director, we are calling the minister. When the minister comes, we say, yes, so you allotted 200 million to us. We have not even received 10 million. But again, that's also the function of lack of, we like call it, the ability not to follow your overhead function, especially in the area of the National Assembly. Because the National Assembly is supposed to be check and balance of government. We have approved this budget. They're supposed to follow up. Has money been released? How much has been released? But they're not doing that. The only time you see them do that is when they want to be dramatic.
Or when you're coming for the following year's budget defense.
And you know, Jibola, you know, when they start that, there's something.
Okay, Muktar, looking at the composition of the 2026 budget, it looks good on paper because a larger chunk of the budget is going for capital expenditure. But then...
you don't have money for.
That you don't have money for. But
you're going to borrow for that again.
Somehow, the crisis in the Middle East, it's like a blessing for Nigeria because the projection for 2026 budget is $65 per barrel. And when you look at the price of crude now, it's about 105 or 110. So we are going to make more.
What is your reserve? Before the Middle East crisis started, your reserve was about 50 billion. During the Middle East crisis, your reserve had
240.
So where, how?
So why do we keep believing that it's a blessing if at the end of the day there's a dip?
Because you are not even, you see,
we're not even the revenue, there's nothing coming in.
Forward payment. Some of these
like we had in the time of Kiari.
Yeah, forward payment.
They've
you are
paid,
borrowed, you are owing Emzin Bank. You remember 3 billion.
And how many
you decided that you will give them crude. Today, Dangote is not getting enough crude.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you are not producing to give them to Dangote, but OICs are already paid upfront.
Yeah.
So you have to,
give it to them.
So your capacity to produce is not there. Oil theft. Budget based on $65, based on an oil production of about 2 million barrels. How do you achieve that? Till now, since, in short, Tinubu administration have improved upon it. Before now, we're doing 800,000 barrels per day.
Yeah, now we're doing about 1.
We are doing about 1.63, 1.4, 1.6.
And there's a projection.
With condensers all in Gbogbo joined together. We must get somewhere. So it's the challenge. So even if you are 65, mark you now. The 65 is the oil benchmark.
Yeah.
That means you only spend $65. We used to call that in the excess crude account.
Yes.
But it was now moved because the excess crude account is not legitimate. So we move it to sovereign wealth fund account. Yeah. Sovereign wealth fund. So what happened? Every oil nation has sovereign wealth fund. So now we are making $65 per barrel. You put it at $65 per barrel. But now you are making about 100 and something. The difference are supposed to go to the sovereign wealth fund to invest for blink days.
But we're not even saving that.
So we are not even know whether they are even saving it. The last time I had about the sovereign wealth fund, when they gave us their financial, they are in the red.
Look, Muktar, sometimes when we talk about these things, it looks like it's just a blink. And things.
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I don't think it's a blink, but we need to put the reality on ground and then
so
look
the
at
resources
that we are trying to. That's why the president is going to borrow, because it's not all blink, because he wants those projects. Those projects will have impact on our lives.
Yeah,
and it will make the economy grow.
But unfortunately, we have a price to pay. See, I keep telling people, if you commit spiritual sin, Jibola, spiritual sin. You go to church or you go to mosque.
And then you ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. The Lord will forgive you. If you commit economic sin, you will pay. Whether your generation will pay or the next generation will pay. It's an economic sin.
Yeah.
If you are at home and you are used to spending everything, and you spend and you unfortunately you go, your children will pay because they will not live the better life. Because you didn't even have any savings for them. Right. So what we are suffering now is the economic sins
we have
that the
committed
previous
before now.
government are committing and this current government is committing.
pay-
Another
And will
government will
continue to pay it
that sin
forward.
until we decide to do the right thing.
Right.
And the funny thing about economy is that when you are doing the right thing, that's why I say with these statements as leaders, when you are doing the right thing in the economy, you don't see the result instantly.
Immediately.
Because you did not get there instantly. It was gradually. So you begin to see results. Just an example. When the administration came in, there was hula baloo, exchange rate. Everything was, or people were even saying it would be 2,500. But you saw the administration through the CBN, they were calm. They kept doing the needful. We saw today now, we are seeing exchange rate at 1,370. Because the right policy are being put in place. There was panic, but with the panic, you came up with policies. The policies, now you have an exchange rate that is devoid of what do we call it, of middlemen.
Yeah.
Nobody can go to CBN and collect bag of dollar.
And there's
On
no
behalf of
speculation
the-
anymore.
There's no speculation anymore.
There's just one.
The
stable
banks are even
market,
telling
yeah.
you, use your card. They are telling you the exchange rate every day. You see, but it did not happen in a day. It took almost 2 years. So that's what we should be thinking.
So we still have to wait a while for us to begin to see some of the impact
Reform.
of those reforms. That's one.
Yes, sir.
Then beyond infrastructure and every other thing that you have highlighted earlier today as to what this government is doing to grow the economy, how significant is power to all of this?
Well, let's not go there now. You know.
Since you don't want to
We
go
know,
into
we know. You know, if you know, you know.
Muktar,
Power
you are the one who knows. The people don't
Power is
know.
key. People know because we are not. Power is key. Do you have power? We don't have power. This administration have come in. The power minister have
We don't have the power. Yes, the
Former
former
power.
power.
He
minister.
came in and have given us different ban, and have left us in that ban and has gone again. And the ban is not banding. If you are in ban A is no more banding. Then you are in ban C, you are not even seeing light. Where is it done? Have you seen an economy where now electricity is based on levy, on the level that you are? Industries are crying. You are not seeing those lights. You have to do independence power. The industry that are striving today in Nigeria, the cement industry, you know why they are striving? They put money to build their own independence power plant. That's what they are not connected to the national grid. That's why they are striving. They are beginning to, today Dangote is striving. Dangote alone can give Nigeria about 15,000 megawatts. Based on his refinery. His refinery is not under the national grid, otherwise you will not see the light of day.
True.
So we need to look at power. Power is key, but we need to put the right person there. The former minister of power came with an agenda. He did nothing. He did not even add one megawatt.
To the grid.
Rather, what he did was to add more pain. We must pay more for what we don't consume. Because he was dancing with the J-School, or the Dinkos, or the James. If you have a good power minister, you first of all look at what the problem was. The problem with Nigeria was not in the area of distribution, generation. It was distribution. But why were you so why were you so fixed? And when you are going now, you are saying if you were advised that they will have a coordinating minister for energy.
Muktar, as we wrap up this conversation this morning, in the area of debt restructuring and financial discipline, I know you've talked about PPP and other arrangements. What should this government be looking at when it comes to financial discipline, and also look at a way out from constant borrowing?
We have to reduce the cost of governance.
Bottom line.
Bottom line.
That's it.
Then go to PPP. That's the bottom line.
Instead of borrowing.
Instead of borrowing. Reduce the cost of government.
Right.
That's killing us. This government presently have the highest stance on political appointees. And political appointee will have political appointee.
Right.
So we need to reduce the cost of governance and then look at the PPP.
All right. So that's where we would leave this conversation this morning. Reduce the cost of governance and look at PPP as an arrangement. And perhaps if we look at this, this will probably be a way out from the incessant borrowing that this administration is into, even though Muktar says there's really nothing bad in borrowing, but what exactly are you borrowing for? Thank you so much, Muktar Mohammed, for finding time to be with us on the program today. We appreciate your thoughts.
My pleasure always. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we return, Adi Binkwe will be here with her Lagos conversation.
The views expressed on this program do not represent that of the producer, management of Lagos Television, or the Lagos State Government. They remain the perspectives of those expressing them. Thank you for staying with Lagos Television.